lesson, I'm going to be talking about one of my favorite topics for playing the guitar, and that's going to be chords. Those were a few different chords that I was using within that song that you heard earlier. But before we do that, there are a few different things that we are going to need to know. First of all, we are going to be numbering our fingers. Your pointer finger, we're going to call that number 1. Your middle finger is finger number 2. Your ring finger is finger number 3. And your pinky finger is going to be 4. So that's really important to note, and here's a diagram to show that. The next thing that we need to know is going to be that we are going to be numbering our frets as well. So this is fret number 1, fret number 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then it goes all the way throughout. And here's the diagram of that. The third thing that we're going to be numbering is going to be our strings. The way that I like to remember it is the smallest or the thinnest string, the smallest number. So your thinnest string is number 1, and then as you go up, go 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 is going to be your thickest string. But now that we have those 3 ingredients, we can end up using something called a chord diagram that I'm going to introduce you to now. This is the basic layout of a chord diagram. This line right here represents the first string, or your thinnest string. This is your second, third, fourth, fifth, and this is going to be your 6th string, which is also our thickest string. This is the nut of your guitar. By the way, this is the nut of your guitar. This is the 1st fret, 2nd fret, and 3rd fret. Now, we're going to be seeing numbers occurring on this diagram, and there's also going to be some symbols up over at the top here as well. So let's start with a very simple chord. All right, so we're going to put a dot right there. I'm going to put a 3 by it. I'm going to put some zeros on top of this, and let's just put some X's right here. This is a very simple chord. So, notice that I have a 3 right there. The way that I like to start reading these chord diagrams is I like to start with these first. These represent your fingers. Now it has a 3, and if we remember from earlier, our 3 is representing our ring finger. So what it wants you to do is it wants you to take your ring finger, it wants you to go to your thinnest string, and it wants you to go to your 3rd fret. So let's do that real quick. Now, notice that I have some zeros at the very top of my chart. These are going to be open strings that you're going to be playing along with this. So when you strum it, you're actually going to be strumming all of these open strings along with this string together. And we have some X's over these 2 lines, which are representing our 5th and our 6th string. So you are not going to be playing those 2 strings. So what it wants you to do is it wants you to put your 3rd finger on your 3rd fret of your thinnest string and strum all 4 of those strings together. So it's going to look like this. I just wrote out another chord that I'd like you to try. This is a G7 chord. The chord name is usually at the very top of the diagram. Now notice on this example, we're going to be using our 1st finger, which is our pointer finger, and it's going to be going on our 1st string, or your thinnest string, and it's going to be going on your 1st fret. Notice that we have an X on our 6th string and an X over our 5th string. That means that we're not going to be playing those 2 strings, but we have a 0 over our 4th, 3rd, and 2nd string, which we're going to be playing all 4 of those strings together. So take a second to try that out, and when you're ready, it should look something like this. Take a moment to pause the video and see if you can play this chord. Notice that it has a 1, so it wants you to be using your 1st finger or your pointer finger. Notice that the pointer finger is going to be going on our 2nd string, and it's going to be going on our 1st fret. Also take note that we're not going to be playing our 6th, 5th, and 4th string. Those all have X's over them, so we're not playing those 3 strings. But we are going to be playing our 3rd string and our 1st string along with it. So you're going to be strumming these 3 strings together. Now that we've been through a few easy examples, time for a bit of a challenge. This is one of the chords that I used quite a bit within that song that you heard earlier. This is going to be called an A7 chord. Notice that I'm going to be using my 2nd finger and my 2nd fret on my 4th string, and I'm also going to be using my 3rd finger on my 2nd string on my 2nd fret, and we're also going to be including all of these open strings as well. We're going to call that one A7. So, go ahead, take a moment and see if you can play this chord. As I mentioned, this chord is a little more tricky than the first 3 that we talked about. What it's asking for is it wants your 2nd finger, which is your middle finger, to go to your 2nd fret, and it wants you to go to your 4th string, which is right there. And you can count up to it too. That's a good way to do that. 1, 2, 3, 4th string. It's also asking for your 3rd finger, which is your ring finger. It's going to go to your 2nd fret as well, but it wants you to go to your 2nd string. So there's your 1st string, and there is your 2nd string. Now notice that I'm using the tips of my fingers the best that I can. Also, notice that I'm using these nice high arches on my fingers. I'm not sure if you can even see that. And when you're done, all 6 of those strings should ring out independently. That's a good way to check whether your chords are working or not. And when you strum them all together, that is going to be your A7 chord. Out of all the chords that I'm going to talk about today, this one's going to be the most difficult. If you don't get it at first, don't worry about it. It's going to get easier and easier with time. Anyways, what it's going to ask for is it wants you to, first of all, use your 1st finger to go to your 1st fret on our 2nd string. On your 3rd string, on your 2nd fret, it wants you to be using your 2nd or middle finger. And on our thinnest string, on our 2nd fret, we're going to be placing our 3rd finger, which is going to be our ring finger. Also, we're going to be playing these 2 strings open, our 4th and our 5th string, and we are not going to be playing our 6th string. And we're going to call this chord D7. Let's go through those one at a time. Again, it's asking for your 1st finger, which is our pointer finger, to go to your 1st fret on your 2nd string. So here's your 1st string, and there is your 2nd string. Next, it asks to use your 2nd finger, which is our middle finger, to go to your 2nd fret, and I want you to go to your 3rd string. 1, 2, 3. And lastly, it asks for your 3rd finger, which is your ring finger, to go to your 2nd fret on your thinnest string. And we're going to be playing our 5th string and our 4th string along with those 3, and we're not going to be playing our 6th string. So when you're done, and again, if you want to check whether your chord is going to work, hit all those strings individually. They should all ring out, and when they do, you know you got it right. This is going to be the last chord that I'm going to talk about within this lesson. It wants you to put your 1st finger on your 1st fret of your 3rd string, and we're also going to be placing our 2nd finger on our 2nd fret on our 5th string, and we're going to be strumming all 6 strings together, and we're going to be calling this chord E7. So go ahead, take a second to see if you can find that chord. To review quickly what we just did, we're going to be taking our 1st finger, which is our pointer finger. We're going to be going to our 1st fret, going to our 3rd string. 1, 2, 3. Our 2nd finger is going to be going in our 2nd fret, and we're going to be going all the way up to our 5th string. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And you're going to be using the tips of your fingers the best that you can, having these nice high arches. That's going to help you get all of the strings to ring out independently. And if you would like to check it, And then when you're ready, that is going to be your E7 chord. Now that you guys know how to read chord diagrams, I'm going to move on to chord charts, but not today. Unfortunately, you're going to have to wait for our next lesson. But if you'd like to check it out, go ahead and click the subscribe button below. It's a great way to support this channel. And in the meantime, if you want to see how those chords can be put into practice, you can check out the full version of that song I recorded. It's called the Headwaters Groove, and it's also available on this channel. I hope you guys are doing great, and we'll see you next time.